this has been probably Prince Harry's worst week in, I would say, 30 years. And it started off with a bang. He started the week off. This is going to be, now remember, this is his first time back in the UK in 4 years. It's only been 3 days and it's already a disaster. He started the week off in a huge fight with his father over Buckingham Palace, made it public through the press saying, I wanted to go. They said no. And of course, Buckingham Palace shot back and said, no, we invited you. You said no, and now you're trying to do it at the last minute. Of course, then Harry arrives in the UK, staying somewhere we don't know, but clearly not with palatial security. And he goes straight to a movie premiere where he is photographed with a man who has been accused of rampant anti-Semitism. The next day, it's announced that Harry has lost his massive epic battle in a most humiliating fashion to the Daily Mail. And then he, of course, goes straight into the victim narrative of, well, this was complete whitewash. We're going to get into all that and more with my good friend, the Daily Beast royal editor, founder of The Royalist, Tom Sykes. Tom, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Paula.
So, Tom, this seems like a watershed week for Harry. What did he think was going to happen as opposed to what actually happened?
Well, I think what he thought was going to happen was that he was going to successfully pressure the British government into giving him security, that he was going to be staying at Buckingham Palace, that he was going to win the court case, and that he was going to give a victory lap on the steps of the Royal Courts of Justice.
Wow. It's not really looking like any of that happened. Was he not even aware that perhaps it wouldn't go the way he was hoping it would go? Didn't he get even an inkling when Buckingham Palace, aka King Charles, basically engaged in a public spat with him over where he would stay?
Well, this is what's sort of been so unbelievable about this whole thing. And I think what this really gets to the core of is the absolutely chaotic organization at the heart of what is left of the very gutted and denuded Sussex organization. So I can't even remember when it was in all this madness, but at one point where there'd been, a load of back and forth about who was going to be staying where, on this, famous WhatsApp group that they communicate with journalists through, somebody on that group sort of just said, look, what's actually going on? What are you saying that he was invited to Buckingham Palace? And they're saying that he turned the invite down and then suddenly and basically we were told by Harry's spokesperson that Harry was conducting these negotiations direct. I mean, it's an extraordinary indictment of what's kind of how arrogant Harry is, what a difficult position, frankly, his staff are put into by this mercurial man, changing his mind from one moment to the next and clearly not looping anybody into it. I mean, the idea that Harry is just kind of emailing some accommodation manager at Buckingham Palace. I mean, it was just, it was farcical, really. And, for everybody watching, it was, in a way, it was quite amusing. But I'm sure for Harry, it was, yet another example of, oh, God, everything's so awful and the world's against me and they're all trying to stitch me up.
Well, it does seem weird because it seems that although almost 10 years has passed since he got married, and 8 years since he got married, and 6 years since he did the freedom flight to the US, it seems as if he doesn't realize that his position and his privileges may have changed, especially after writing the book Spare, especially after the Netflix doc, and he and his wife Meghan continually kind of using the palace and the royals as their punching bags. It just seems as if he thought he could slip right back in to being good old Prince Harry.
Well, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, Paula. And the crazy thing about this whole situation, as I wrote in a Substack today, is that Harry, he could still, at any moment, even now, he could completely reset this whole thing. He could snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. If he stood up, if he just stood up and he gave a speech and he said, "Do you know what? I'm really sorry. I spoke a bit hastily yesterday when I accused the judge of a whitewash. I'm really grateful to the judge for all his work. I've accepted the verdict of the court. I accept that I'm not entitled to police security. I want to renounce my titles for me and my kids. I love the United Kingdom. I want to come back here more. I'm really sorry for any damage I've done to the relations of my father or anyone I may have upset." Do you know what? People would overnight, people would say, "Do you know what, man? Good on you." You know, they genuinely would. And it's like, it is all there in his grasp. And Harry's problem is that he's just stuck in this narrative of not being able to accept it, not being able to move on. And that's the problem, is because he won't accept it, he can't move on. You know, and you talk to any, you know, cod psychiatrist or whatever you want, it's impossible to move on with your life and until you accept the things, you know, that you cannot change, right?
Well, that's interesting because then he, and I agree with you, absolutely. But then he arrives. He's staying somewhere mysterious. You know, who knows? A friend's house, Soho House, who knows? However, what does he do on his first moments of arrival? He changes and then goes to a premiere that is being held by Misan Harriman, his and Meghan's longtime photographer, who has been accused of rampant anti Semitism and is wearing a shirt in the photos that says the Anti Apartheid Club, which on its face looks fine. Of course, we all are against apartheid when it happened in South Africa, but it has now become a slogan for the pro Palestinian movement in the UK. Now, why would he? I have several questions about this. Why would he immediately show up to a film premiere after he's made such a ballyhoo about security issues? Why would he then get photographed with Misan Harriman, who's had problems again with anti Semitic claims against him, when Harry is already trying to say, oh no, anti Semitism is bad? And why would he even bother going to a premiere on this big week?
Well, yeah, look, I thought it was a absolutely ridiculous thing to do on his first day back in the United Kingdom. I mean, there is a reason, isn't there, Paula, why Harry is not considered a great thought leader on the subject of anti-Semitism. And that is because when he was 20, he was photographed wearing a Nazi outfit at a fancy dress party, which was one of the biggest scandals at the time. I mean, it seems rather quaint to think now that that was a great scandal, but it was a huge scandal at the time. And to make matters even worse, in his book, he blamed this on William and Catherine, um, despite sort of then writing an article in the New Statesman saying that he took accountability for his actions, which he clearly didn't. Like, he just, in the book, he said it was all William and Catherine's fault because they laughed at it or something.
Mm-hmm.
So then he turns up on Monday, you know, their office say, well, Miss Harriman is just an old friend and he wanted to support him. I mean, that's fine, right? You want to support your old friend, but like the reality is that it, the sensitivity of them. This is the reason that the royals don't get involved in politics. Do you know what I mean? This is the reason they don't get. They do not go near this stuff. And all this stuff about Miss Harriman it's all in the public domain. I mean, he's had to give up his job at the South Bank Centre, one of the leading UK arts organisations, because he sort of retweeted these unhinged claims that kind of Jared and Ivanka were selling swathes of Albania to kind of the Jewish mafia and stuff. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers tinfoil hat stuff, you know. And like, I think there's and Harriman says that he actually resigned before all that happened, and it's just a coincidence of timing. Whatever the situation may be, it's not. He's a controversial figure, and I think that the difference is that for somebody in Harry's position, it's entirely acceptable to think, do you know what, this is my old friend, and they're being monstered by the press, and I feel for them. But at the same time, do you know what? Just today, I don't think I can actually turn up and be photographed next to them in a promotional publicity shot for a film bearing the very unfortunate name "I Shoot People." I mean, obviously referring to him being a photographer, but not ideal.
No, no, especially since Harry's big fight with the government is his bodyguards are not allowed to carry guns. So then the next day, the verdict came down, and it was shocking. There were 97 claims brought by Harry, Sir Elton John, Elizabeth Hurley, Sadie Frost, the Baroness, and other people that said that the Mail had used illegal ways of getting sources, whether it be blagging, wiretapping, whatnot. And the judge threw them all out. And what was shocking, while this was happening, Harry was at Chatham House giving a speech about Invictus, presumably trying to drum up business, aka money, for the 2027 Birmingham games. This comes out. He looks ashen faced. He is very grim. And then afterwards, he releases a statement with Baroness Lawrence that says, it's a huge whitewash. It's almost as if he's really dissing the courts. First, he said when the Ravik decision came down, saying, no, you're not a working royal. You cannot have state-funded security. He said it was an old-fashioned stitch-up by the men in gray suits. And now it's apparently the corruption against Harry and the schemes have spawned over to the British courts. What is going on?
Well, I think it's an expression of Harry's paranoia. And I think that the fact that this statement was issued after David Sherborne had been to see him at Chatham House, David Sherborne's his lawyer, I think shows you very clearly who's been feeding that paranoia and who's been making a lot of money out of that paranoia. And I thought that Paul Dacre's statement that he made, Paul Dacre's the editor-in-chief of the Mail, and he made this brilliant statement in which he just said, you know what, I feel sorry for Harry. He's been manipulated by all these people. And I don't think Paul Dacre does feel sorry for Harry, but I thought it was a very, very intelligent statement because it just kind of, he just said, I feel sorry for Harry. He wrote this pathetic book saying that he'd killed the Taliban and that he'd taken drugs, and he's invaded his own privacy. And I thought, but yeah, the bottom line is, this 436-page judgment came down from Justice Nicklin, threw out every single one of the 97 allegations of unlawful information gathering. I have to say, I was in court and I saw Harry give evidence, and I saw quite a lot of the other people. I watched some of it, on a video link, and I watched some of it in court.
Disclaimer: Royal Affairs UK is an independent news and commentary channel covering the British royal family. Our content is based on publicly available information, official statements, and reputable news sources. Opinions and analysis are clearly presented as commentary and should not be considered official statements. We are not affiliated with Buckingham Palace or any member of the royal family.
Harry was a phenomenally unimpressive witness.
How so?
He got kind of distracted. He got very aggressive. He started going on about what an awful time he'd had as a result of this. The judge kept saying, I get it, but that's not an issue here. You need to just answer the questions. It's yes or no. And it's for me to decide, what it means. Don't tell me what it means. And this was actually referenced in the judgment. And the judge really was not impressed by Harry. And it was interesting because he was actually the judge who'd presided over the Mirror case, in which he had in which he had found in Harry's favour. And I think the reality is that the Mail is just an incredibly different beast to the Mirror or the Sun, right? The Mail, like the culture of a kind of mid-market tabloid like the Mail, is just not a culture that's like involved in hacking people's phones to get the inside details of, like, you know, uh, murders and, you know, child abductions and horrendous things that are the red meat, or were the red meat of the red tops in those days. And I think the judge, I think there were a couple of points where you could say, yeah, do you know what? Maybe Harry kind of almost has a case here, where fundamentally what had happened was a freelancer had given a story, and you could argue that the journalist should have interrogated the freelancer a bit more about where it came from. But I think that looking at it in the round, remember, this is a civil case, not a criminal case. So all you're looking for is probability, and a lot rests on the judgment of the judge. And I think that the judge, fundamentally, he warned them so many times not to proceed with the case. So many times. He said, you need to really think about this. You need to go and have a drink. You need to go and shake hands, or, you know, have a word to yourself. And I think that ultimately, when the judge looked at it in the round, he just thought, I can't, if I give them even one win on one thing, they're going to run it up and down the hill and claim it's a victory, which I don't want them to think, and it's not.
Well, it's actually interesting because there are reports out now from the Upsetter that during discovery, when Harry's team and David Sherborne found out that the Daily Mail had actually kept all of their notes for 20 years, something they most likely did not think would have happened, and had all the text messages between, say, Harry and the reporter Charlotte Griffiths, who hung out with him, even though Harry had said, no, I've never met her, I don't remember it. They actually tried to settle with the Daily Mail, and the Daily Mail kind of went, no, we're good. Thank you. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so there's a Substack called The Upsetter, which is run by a phenomenal British investigative journalist called Michael Gillard, who's one of the very early members of the Insight team. He's hugely respected. It is he is the expert on kind of dodgy geezers, corrupt British cops. It's all quite lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so Michael had this phenomenal story that he dropped literally a couple of hours before the verdict came out, saying that they were looking for an off-ramp before Christmas, when, you may remember, the Sussex organisation was kind of melting down, right? And everybody, Meredith Maines left, James Holt left, all these people kept leaving. It was like complete chaos. And they were apparently looking for an off-ramp. And apparently the thing it fell down on was that they tried to say that there would be a no crowing clause, i.e. you couldn't go, ha, 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 we told you. And the Mail said, no, we're going to crow. We're going to crow. And as a result, the kind of whole, off-ramp fell apart, and they kind of had to go through with it at that stage. The die was cast.
It almost seems like everything that happened is really because of ego. And it's about an overconfidence, perhaps born of the fact that Harry is a royal and has never really had someone say no to him. And I think this comes into play also this week, because this is a make or break week for Invictus. He is in the UK specifically to drum up around 25 million pounds, which is a lot of money. And he is there to try to get it from corporations and private sponsors. What does his behavior this entire week, as well as the court case, do to his hopes of getting anywhere near 25 million pounds for Invictus?
Well, I think Invictus are the real losers in this, and I think every right-thinking person would wish only the greatest of success to a charity that tries to help wounded veterans. But I think that the reality is I think that at some point, and I think that point may be coming sooner now, I think they're going to have to accept that having Harry as their patron, as their spokesman, as the face of the organization is unhelpful. And I think it's unhelpful partly because of all the drama he brings, but also because the head of the British Armed Forces is the king. You can't have an organization which is supporting former members of the British Armed Forces at
Wow.
war with the institution headed by the head of the British Armed Forces. It doesn't make any logical sense. And I think, I always felt that it was going to, why Harry's role was going to end there. I couldn't see it going on to 2029. I think it's too late to change horses now for them with this event due next year. I think that might be even more damaging for them. But at this stage, would you rule it out? I mean, I don't know. Well, I
Mm.
do feel incredibly sorry for the people, a lot of volunteers who work for Invictus, who've, been putting out the bunting and organizing. And I'm not suggesting they're crying into their cornflakes because, Meghan's not going to show up or is going to show up or what have you. But I think it's just the fact that you've put all this work into it, and you can imagine them all being on the phone this weekend to each other going, what's going on? And I'm going, I don't know, and that is just not a good situation. It's not a
No.
respectful way to treat people who are giving their time to a cause. It's just, I think it's a shitty thing to do, frankly.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Megan because I have reported that she will be showing up at Invictus Birmingham events. She also is trying to, redraw herself in a new light as, more charitable and very supportive. However, as we saw with Santa Bali, the charity that Harry had to step down from, even though he founded it, it was shown that his and Meghan's brands were tarnishing and hurting the charity. And so, do you feel like this is happening with Invictus? But also, you did report that she will be showing up in Birmingham on Friday to do the Invictus events, which means she will be in the country. The children are likely also going to be with her, not at the event, but in private. What do you think this does to Invictus as it's kind of rebranded by the Sussexes as Harry and Meghan's event, not just Harry's?
Yeah, well, they've said they've said she might turn up. I'd be cautious about predicting anything with this couple anymore because you don't know what they're going to do. Look, there's no doubt that Harry's behaviour over the past 10 days has been hugely damaging to Invictus. But when it comes to Meghan, quite frankly, I think I felt very sorry for Harry having to face all that yesterday on his own.
Mm,
I thought that Meghan should have been by his side. As I said, I think that the tenor of the statement was completely wrong. And I think that had there been an admission, and not even just an acceptance that this was over, then I think they could both get on with their lives and move forward with their lives. But I think that, the sort of Sussex Royal brand is so tarnished now
mm.
that I think that actually the smartest thing that they could do would say, do you know what? We're giving up the titles. We're renouncing the titles for ourselves and for the kids. And we want to make a fresh start and put all this behind us. And we're very sorry for, And I was looking at one of my favorite celebrity statements of all time was George Michael when he got caught in one of his many indiscretions. And he just gave this brilliant statement and said, I just want to apologize to all my fans for letting you down, to everyone else for being so boring. And and everybody just loved George because it had the humility, it had and that's actually all Harry needs to do right now. He at any moment, that's the mad thing about this, is it's within his grasp at any moment to say, I accept reality and I'm moving on.
Why isn't he?
Because I think that there is a severe paranoia, basically, and I think there is a sort of borderline breakdown going on. And the thing is that Harry's told us repeatedly about his mental health troubles. Well, anybody who has had mental health troubles or who knows anyone who has had mental health troubles, which means everybody on the entire planet, right, knows that mental health is not a binary thing. It's not like you're really, really bad one day and then you just recover and you're fine. Do you know what I mean? Forever after, because you went to some therapy that your wife sent you to. It's like one of those things that comes and goes. And I think that Harry is having a, really, really tough time at the moment. And I think, to be totally honest with you, I think that whilst he has been incredibly foolish, I completely agree with Paul Dacre that he has been manipulated by these lawyers who have made, David Sherborne has made tens and tens of millions of dollars out of the phone hacking thing. And do you know what? It's entirely logical for him to keep going. And, you know, if you look at this, it's like David Sherborne had Elton, then Elton got Harry involved, then Harry got Doreen Lawrence involved. Like, you know, it's Doreen Lawrence says in her statement, it's after she receives an email from Harry that she decides to join the case. I mean, of all the people who deserve an apology, it's Baroness Lawrence.
Yeah, I agree. Now, what do you think will happen with the rest of the trip? And what do you think will happen when they go home to Montecito? Because it doesn't seem like Californians are very impressed with the shenanigans that have gone on so far this week.
Well, the one thing you can say about these two is that they do have the hide. They appear to have the hide of a rhinoceros. So I imagine that what will happen is that Meghan will, and I have to say it's highly, with massive asterisks next to it, but I imagine what will happen is that Meghan will show up. They'll go and do their thing at Althorpe. They'll get a photo or a snap of the kids at Diana's grave. They will go back to America and they'll get busy working on the 30th anniversary of Diana's death documentary that I've been told by very good sources that they're doing for Netflix. You know, the King's still saying that he's open to meeting them. They're still saying that they could meet the King. I think it'd be a huge mistake by the King, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Do you think the King has finally had enough?
Well, it looked like it, didn't it, at the weekend? But then there's been a lot of briefing coming out of the palace saying that a room still will be made available for them, you know, in September, but that they hope they've learnt their lesson, not to bring all this drama with them. Because Harry's back in September, right, for the World Child Awards. And then he's back next year for the actual Invictus Games, which was supposed to be coming for a month next year. So, I mean, goodness, you know, with the children and the kids and everything. So, I mean, this could all kick off again next year. But I think that probably, unless and until Harry can accept that he needs to manage his security a little bit differently, it's just going to end in disaster again.
All right, Tom Sykes, thank you so much. I know you're so busy writing your book, The Dukes of Hazzard, that is coming out next year. I cannot wait. About Harry, Prince Andrew, and of course, Edward, the former king turned duke. This is going to be the best book ever. I'm so excited. Thank you. I know you're slammed. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Paula.
Take care. As everyone else, thank you. I so appreciate you. Now, don't forget, like, subscribe, hype, and we will see you again next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care.